Should we vaccinate wild animals? It's now 2023, and the concept of mandating vaccinations or even recommending vaccinations for human beings is becoming increasingly controversial. But what does it mean if we are going to take these vaccines and use them to either protect animals or to vaccinate animals to protect humans from the spread of disease? In this week's Ethical Dilemma in Science, we're going to take a look at should we interfere with nature by vaccinating wild animals? These Ethical Dilemma in Science presentations are based in part on current events, and this one is no different. And so we're looking at a February 2023 article talking about vaccinating endangered Golden Lion Tamarin, so a type of monkey, against a yellow fever epidemic. Now, this is different from the traditional way of vaccinating wild animals, where animals are vaccinated to minimize the spread of disease to humans. In this case, we are looking at vaccinating these wild monkeys in an effort to protect them from a disease that is spreading through the human population. Now, an outbreak in Brazil killed 750 people in 2016 and killed roughly a third of these very vulnerable endangered tamarin monkeys. The estimates are that the population of monkeys went from roughly 3,700 down to about 2,500. And so the question is this appropriate? Is this something we should be doing? Should we be vaccinating wild animals? Now, when we're looking at vaccinating animals, we're basically looking at the spread of disease either from humans to animals or from animals to human. And so these are examples of zoonotic diseases, also referred to as zoonoses. It's estimated that about 6 out of 10 infectious diseases can be spread from animals to people, and about 3 out of 4 new or emerging infectious diseases in people are going to be coming from animals. And so examples of that we're very familiar with now in 2023. COVID-19 appears to have been a coronavirus that was originally identified within a bat population within China. Currently, again in 2013, we're looking at concerns about the avian influenza, basically bird flu, potentially spreading to human beings. There's currently an outbreak in Southeast Asia, but over the last few years, we've seen outbreaks affecting poultry farms in the United States. And so we're looking at this spread of diseases back and forth between humans and the animal population. So the process of vaccination is based on the fact that our bodies, our human bodies, as well as the bodies of many animals, have immune system cells, a system within the body where cells are specialized to protect the body from potential pathogens, disease-causing agents like viruses and vaccines. Now, in many cases, exposure to a new virus or a new bacteria will trigger an immune response, trigger a response in your body to build the protein machinery and the cellular mechanism to fight off that disease. But that first exposure is going to be relatively weak. And so if it is a deadly disease, a weak response, a delayed response could be detrimental to the individual. It could allow the disease to become established within the body and make it much, much harder for your immune system to fight it off. And in the instances of a deadly or very severe disease, an individual may become too sick for their body to be able to fight it off. So what happens in the immunization process is that you expose the individual to this novel or this new pathogen, a new virus or a new bacteria, but you expose them to a killed version or a weakened version of that virus so that they are not exposed to the incredible devastating effects of a disease. Now, the new mRNA vaccines allow us to basically prime the immune system without using a complete viral particle, without using something that had the very rare instance or very rare risk of causing more severe damage to the individual, because you're looking at a single molecule without all of the disease-causing components associated with it. But what happens, regardless of the type of vaccine that occurs, your immune system is going to be exposed to this new shape, this new potential pathogen, and the body's going to respond to it. but that response is going to be relatively weak, and it's going to take a little bit of time for the body to build the mechanism, the cells and the molecules needed to fight off that disease. And so what we can see in that primary exposure, you get a slow, kind of weak response to the exposure to the pathogen. Now, what happens then if that individual that has been vaccinated is exposed to that pathogen again, either through the booster shot, a second vaccine, or get exposed to the pathogen for the disease? They're going to have their immune system recognize that pathogen and have a much quicker response and a much stronger response. And so they're able to fight off that disease pathogen before it has a chance to become established within the body and cause damage or potential death. Now, this whole process then of immunization is to prepare the body to fight off diseases very, very effectively. So while vaccination of humans is becoming increasingly controversial, we look at the instances of vaccinating wild animals. And what we can see is that we've been vaccinating wild animals for a number of years. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has been distributing oral rabies vaccines since 1990, so over 30 years. And this is something that's been occurring in Europe since 1980 and Canada since 1985. Now, the goal of this is to take these small packets, which have the oral rabies vaccine. They're coated with fish meal, so it's going to be attractive to the raccoons. Put that in bait stations or drop that in regions where raccoons are going to be present. The raccoons will find it, eat that, and become vaccinated. Now, the goal is that by vaccinating 50% of the population of raccoons, you can reduce the transmission of rabies within that population, prevent rabies outbreaks, and ultimately prevent the spread of rabies to human beings. So we're seeing that occurring within 16 states within the United States, within the Northeast region. And so we're using vaccines against raccoons. And this is to protect rabies from spreading out from the Northeast region to the Appalachian Mountains or further west. Now, we're also seeing that Texas has been vaccinating the gray wolves and coyotes with this effort to minimize the spread of rabies within that area. Now, a good example of the effect of the vaccines is that in Texas, they were able to eliminate in 2008 a domestic dog coyote variant of rabies using this oral vaccine. And so it is effective, and it is working to prevent the spread of rabies diseases within the population of animals as well as the spread to human beings. Now, the concept of vaccinating wild animals is somewhat controversial. Many of the traditional conservation efforts have been to minimize the interaction of human beings with a wild natural population. And so we can see examples of that from recent news. Don't feed the bears, because if you feed the bears become dependent on the food from human sources, and they become not really tamer, but they become used to human interaction. And because of that, they may move into areas where humans are living and become a nuisance. Not because they are doing anything kind of abnormal, it's just they're looking for food, and they're used to receiving food from human beings. This has been extended. This is a great National Geographic article from 2021 asking the question, should some of the world's endangered places be off limits to tourists? To, again, minimize the interaction that's occurring with humans kind of going in and interfering with the natural environment within these regions. Now, even though the traditional conservation efforts have tried to minimize the impact of human beings on the natural environment, on these wild animals, there are still really incredible wild animal rescues. And so a couple articles from March 2023, taking a look in Florida, the endangered manatee population is being rescued when they are damaged or hurt by being hit from a propeller by a boat. In this case, we're looking at a manatee that had to be rescued because it became kind of trapped and kind of tied up within fishing gear. So fishing line kind of wrapped around it. And again, these are mammals, and so they need to be able to breathe air. If they become trapped in a fishing net or trapped in fishing line, it will impair their swimming, and they could potentially drown. Another example of this up in Boston, taking a look at a bald eagle that ingested rodenticide, so basically a poison to kill probably rats or mice. The bald eagle ate that, became incredibly sick, but in this case, it was too sick to survive. But lots of different examples of these animal rescues to attempt to kind of heal these animals that have been damaged through their interactions with human society. So this gives rise to our ethical dilemma in science question for this week. Should we interfere with nature and the natural process by vaccinating wild animals? Should humans intervene to protect endangered species, or should we allow them to live and potentially die naturally? Is there a pristine environment, pristine natural habitat that has not been affected by humans in some way, either by humans going in through the process of ecotourism and going through that region, or potentially building into that region, or simply the effects of human interaction causing climate change, disrupting that natural environment? Should wild animals be vaccinated to prevent the spread of diseases to humans, much like we're doing by vaccinating raccoons against rabies? Should wild animals be vaccinated to protect them from disease, like we're doing with the Golden Lion Tamarin monkeys in the Brazilian rainforest? And so in this case, protecting them from a disease that would not normally be in that region, but it's transmitted in this case from human beings with this concept that humans are able to move around rapidly throughout the globe by getting on an airplane, potentially being exposed to a pathogen in one location, getting on an airplane and carrying that pathogen into a new or novel environment. And so that's probably what happened with the yellow fever outbreak within the Brazilian Atlantic rainforest. Is it was probably brought into that region by human beings. Should we be vaccinating these wild animals to protect them from basically the effects of human encroachment? So thank you for listening to this week's Ethical Dilemma in Science. Please see the description below for additional information and references. And I'm going to tag a couple really good articles above all of the references that I encourage you to take a look at. Thank you and have a great week.